was a rumble in the jungle once. I heard Dad was outside again counting birds, and Mama plugged in a nightlight, and I saw the queen of the world. Mama plugged in the nightlight, and I saw the queen of the world.
Hello, and welcome to the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. I'm your co-host, Natalie.
And I'm your other co-host, Liz.
And tonight is a very special night. Not only is it our first actual birth story, it is the birth story of my beautiful sister-in-law sitting next to me, Liz, with her first son, Arthur. You know, there's definitely some emotions running high, so I am really excited to kind of hear this for my first time too, and just reliving this back with Liz. So Liz, I know that you shared a little bit about yourself in our intro, but why don't you tell us and the listeners just a little bit more about you and your family?
Sure. So I am married to a wonderful man named Jason, and we have 2 kids together now. Arthur is 3, and Vivian is like 16 months now. And yeah, so Jason and I met in 2016. We got married in 2017, got pregnant in 2018, had Arthur in 2019, and then got pregnant and had Vivian in 2020. So I got to experience my first birth before the pandemic and then my second in the midst of the pandemic. So that's been fun.
You and Jason really hit the trifecta +2, I guess.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about getting pregnant and kind of your pregnancy journey from here.
Okay. So when, Jason and I got married, we both knew that we wanted to have kids pretty quickly. So we just started trying. Well, I got pregnant really quickly. I was tracking, my ovulation and everything, and decided to take one of those really early little strip tests, and it was positive. And I just went into Jason, hey, look what I have. And then, we were excited, obviously. When we went in for the ultrasound, it was the vaginal ultrasound, which I didn't know those existed either. But, you could see the little heartbeat, and that was just really cool. I had a couple more appointments there, just wasn't really feeling it. So I was talking to a friend at work, and she had told me about her birthing experience at a birthing center, which I hadn't really heard much about. And it's attached, the one that she gave birth at was attached to a hospital. So we made an appointment at the birthing center, and it was amazing. It's like a hotel. I mean, you walk in and they know immediately who you are. They welcome you with fruit-infused water. Their lobby is just so welcoming and warm, and we got a tour of the birthing suites, and I mean, they're just amazing. Huge, queen-size beds with like bubble wall.
Yeah, I love that. It was like different colors.
Yeah, it changed colors, and they had, everything. They had the peanut balls. You could swing from the ceiling.
Yeah, I don't have like the word for those. Yeah. But those were like so cool.
The tubs were amazing. The shower, huge walk-in shower.
Huge walk-in bathroom. Yeah. I mean, everything was so spread out.
It looked really nice compared to what you see in movies, and just like...
And like a small twin bed hospital bed. Yeah.
Those thin mattresses.
Yeah.
So we started I transferred. I was about between 12 and 14 weeks pregnant when I transferred care. Actually, I might have been closer to 20 because I think I had my anatomy scan with my old OBGYN, and then I transferred. And yeah, everything went well. My pregnancy was really good. The only thing I had was morning sickness in my first trimester, and I would keep like crackers next to the bed.
Yeah.
And like reach over before even opening my eyes, like munch on crackers. It was like the only thing that would help with the morning sickness. If I like sat up without eating first, I was just gone all day. Just
so
nauseous.
I'm glad I knew how to get in front of it.
Yeah.
So obviously Jason was really excited and you guys obviously wanted to do this. What was it like telling your families?
I remember telling my mom very early. And I think I texted her a picture of the pregnancy test and she was like, I'm crying. And my older sisters have kids that are a little bit older. So there's a pretty big gap between, the cousins. So they were happy to have more babies around.
Yeah.
And then when we told Jason's family, I think was it Jerry's birthday?
Yeah.
And we wrapped up the pregnancy test and acted like it was like her present.
Yeah.
Which is so gross. Here's a stick I peed on.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were over there for like her birthday or just all of the June birthdays. So me, Marianne, and Jerry. And me and Sam got over there pretty late. And so you guys were like all waiting for us, kind of all had like little like smiles on your face. And I just remember like turning the corner and Jerry was like, look what Jason and Liz got me for my birthday and showed me a positive pregnancy test. And I literally just like screamed. And I was just so excited. You had a like fairly easy pregnancy.
Yeah.
You want to share any more about that?
Towards the end, my blood pressure started creeping up. I would have to go in for the stress tests. But I would get so nervous on the drives there. It was inevitable that we were late, driving there in a rush to our appointments and, going from work to the doctor. So, and they would roll this machine in and immediately, my heart would start racing. And as it got, more and more further into my pregnancy, it would make me more nervous because I knew that my blood pressure was high and that it was like a cycle. So it would just make me more nervous. And I think that's a term, they have a term for that, like white coat syndrome.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And I would always have them do it again at the end of the appointment by hand because the machine would freak me out.
Yeah.
And it was always like normal-ish by the end of the appointment. So the midwives, didn't really think too much of it. I didn't have to go on any medication or have any extra monitoring besides those stress tests. But I was also 37. So considered, geriatric pregnancy, which is just
so
the
hard
worst
to say.
term.
Get a new term, OBGYNs.
Thanks for making me feel so old. So, yeah, that was pretty much it for that, for my pregnancy. I mean, I loved being pregnant. I don't know what it was, but just growing a life inside of me, I don't know, it made me feel so confident and I felt like really beautiful and I could just wear whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And not be like, this makes me look fat.
This is the purpose of the outfit.
Yeah, exactly. I would wear bodycon dresses all the time.
Yes.
I loved it.
Yes. And you guys had a pretty big move in November?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And he literally was born in February.
Yeah.
So
we bought a house in the midst of all of this.
yeah.
We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, which I still love that apartment. I miss that apartment. But then we moved into this really awesome house. It was I think it was built in 1918. It was just such a cool house.
Yeah, it was cool.
And I just got to kind of watch.
Yeah.
Direct everyone where to go. But yeah, we put our Christmas tree up and got some fun maternity photos. And yeah, spent the holidays in our new house, which was awesome. Just being able to spend that time just with Jason and I before bringing another human being into our family.
That is so special.
Yeah.
So Liz, you shared a lot about yourself and your pregnancy and kind of your approach to birth. So let's go ahead and get into your birth story. How did Arthur come into this world?
Fast and furious. So, it was a Thursday night and I think I was like 39 weeks and maybe 3 days.
You're right. I know it.
Do you know?
Yeah, I do.
What was it? 39 and
Yeah, you were
3?
39. You went into labor like February 7th?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you were 39 and 3.
Okay. And that night, we just spent a really good night hanging out. It was the night, I think it was the night of the Grammy nominations. So we were, watching those and then started watching other music videos, kind of brought it back to some old school videos. We started watching some Madonna videos and some Guns N' Roses and some Nirvana, and then a ton of Bjork videos. I don't know, we were just chit-chatting and watching old music videos, and I was bouncing on my ball, and Jason was drinking some wine. And it was just a really relaxing, fun night that we had. And went to bed pretty late. It was probably like 12:30. I went to bed, maybe fell asleep for maybe 30 minutes, got up, woke up, felt like I had to go to the bathroom. So I like rolled over and heard a pop, which at the time I thought was my hip because rolling out of bed when you're 9 months pregnant
It's like a 5-point move.
Yes, it's so hard. And, I slept with the pregnancy pillow and it just was so uncomfortable. And I got up and went to the bathroom, and there wasn't like a gush or anything. But there was something coming out. I thought it was my mucus plug and then just like pee. Later, I did find out that my water did break then. I didn't know that at the time. And even when I told the midwife when I called, she was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound like your water breaking, just labor at home." I tried to go lay back down, and probably not even like 1 minute later, I started having contractions and was like, wait, is this it?
Yeah.
I guess this is it. That was like a really bad period cramp. So, okay, I think this is it. So I wake up Jason. I mean, we had been asleep for maybe an hour.
Yeah.
I felt so bad waking him up, but he was just like, it jumps out of bed. Are you sure? Yeah, I think this is it. I think we're having a baby soon. We started timing the contractions. I think we downloaded an app right then because we were very unprepared. Didn't even have our bags packed.
Oh my gosh, that's weird. I think I was like, Sam, get ready.
We didn't even have the car seat in, nothing.
Oh man.
We were just like, so my due date was the next weekend, or it was after the weekend. So we thought like, we'll make it through this weekend. I don't know why I thought I was going to go into labor on my due date. Like that rarely happens.
Rarely. It's like not even a due date. It's a guest date.
Yeah. And then you hear about like first time moms going past their due date. So I don't know. We just like didn't think that it was going to happen that early, even though it's really not that early.
You're over 39, honey.
So anyways, we started timing the contractions. They were very irregular. They were like, some were like a minute long. Some were like 10 seconds long.
Yeah.
And some were coming like 1 minute after another. And then they'd be like 10 minutes apart. So it was just like really confusing. And, we called the midwife and she just said, try to rest.
That's their answer.
And call us back, when you basically just call us back and they will like assess you over the phone because they want you to labor at home. They don't want you getting there when you're in early stages of labor. They will send you home or they'll make you go like walk around the hospital.
Yeah.
Until you are kind of ready, in that like second stage of labor, I guess. Active labor. So there was no way I was going to rest with these contractions. They were just like really strong, and they would go like up. Like if I could draw a picture, it was like they would go up on a wave and then kind of dip down, but then like go back up. Like it felt like I couldn't pinpoint when one was ending until a new one started.
Yeah.
It was really weird. I never had like that resting, like.
Yeah. The pain was kind of just like with you.
Yeah. And I'd be like, am I still having it? Like looking at Jason like he's going to know.
Yeah. Like timing
what I'm feeling. Yeah. And so I'd be like, oh, okay. No, another one starting. Okay. So we didn't know like when to end the contractions sometimes. I mean, it got more regular as it went on, but I also had hired a doula, which oh my God, she was so amazing. I just loved her so much. We had these sessions where she would, talk to us about what our ideal birth was and like how we would feel if we had to have some kind of intervention or that we weren't going to be able to get our ideal birth. And she really helped us deal with a lot of like emotion surrounding the birth. And we called her and she basically said the same thing as the midwife, just try to rest. I will come whenever you want me to. But it was like 1 a.m. So
yeah.
Like, I could tell, she wanted us to rest because we hadn't slept.
You had a long night ahead of you.
Yeah. So basically, I walked in circles around our house for like 4 hours.
Oh my God.
Having contractions along the way.
Outside in the dark?
No, in the house.
Oh, inside.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was like thinking outside. And in your neighborhood.
Yeah, no, not neighborhood.
not neighborhood.
No, in the house. So like our house was like, we had a really long hallway that attached to the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, back to the hallway. And it just made a big circle. And I could not sit down. I could not lay down. I just did not want any pressure on like that region.
Yeah. So
I was just, the only way I was comfortable was walking. And then when I would have a contraction, I would like lean over the kitchen island or a chair or the bed or whatever it was. And then...
What did Jason do at this point? Go back to sleep?
No. So okay, looking back, I would have like had him put on some music and have him go rest. And I would have eaten something and like, I don't know, hydrated. He literally was following me, wiping up
Oh, yeah.
the fluid.
That just kept trickling?
Yes. Which I thought, I kept being like, I'm sorry, I'm just peeing. Like, I'm just peeing all over the house.
It's kind of funny because I feel like the opposite, like, we can get into that on Thursday, but nothing was coming.
Yeah. And, I'm a first-time mom. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
I was just like in some other world at this point. Like, I could only focus on the next minute.
Yeah, just getting through it.
Yeah.
It's the waves. Like, the whole, like, birth center is like, it's not a contraction, it's a wave. And, like, just let the waves come. And you're literally just, like, in that mindset. I'm just surfing and I'm going to get over this wave and I'm going to go on to the next one and the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. And you knew, like, I didn't really have like a mindset. Like now, I don't know, maybe like hypnobirthing or something would have been a good idea. But at the same time, like my brain was just in a fog. Yes. So I don't know if I could have gotten to the point of even like focusing.
Yeah. It was like you were just like kind of watching yourself from the outside. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I mean, this whole time I was like shedding clothes. Like I think like first my shirt came off and then my pajama pants. And then like, I just did not want anything touching my skin. So I was just walking around the house naked while Jason was following me, wiping up my amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
And we would call, the midwife. I think it was around, it was around like 4 where I was like, okay, these are getting like super painful. I think it might be time to go to the birthing center. So we called the midwife. Oh, well, I took a shower, and I think that really like jump started things too. When I was in the shower, things just got like a lot more intense. So we called the midwife, and Jason's calling her, and they're like, "Let me talk to Liz." And so she heard me, talked me through a contraction, and she could tell from my breathing and that I wasn't able to talk through the contraction that it was time for me to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So we called the doula and told her what the midwife said, and she's like, "Okay, do you want me to meet you at the hospital, or do you want me to meet you at your house?" And I don't know why we had her come to the house. Maybe it was just like closer. And so she came over, and I was still just naked. And she helped me put clothes on and helped me like throw some stuff into a bag while Jason's throwing stuff into a bag. Later, I realized that I packed two pants and no shirt and had to wear my coat home. A bra and a coat.
Jason like wore the same set of clothes for like 2 days.
Yeah. He probably just threw in like underwear. Boy, we were
you guys
so
were
unprepared. So yeah, the doula came in and she helped me get in the car, and I was seriously like, how am I supposed to ride in a car?
Yeah.
It was like a 20-minute drive to the hospital, so not that long, but it was around 5 a.m. and I was just like, how am I supposed to? I can't sit down. Like, I just couldn't sit down. It just felt so uncomfortable. The pressure, I just couldn't stand it. So she showed me like to sit in the back seat backwards with my knees on the seat and my arms like wrapped around the headrest.
Yeah.
So I rode like this to the hospital while having contractions. And it was like just the beginning of rush hour. Jason said like if we had left like even like 30 minutes to an hour later, we would have been stuck in traffic, which that would not have been fun.
I would have thrown a fit.
I mean, it was 270, so that traffic is just awful.
Yeah, that's awful.
So we made it to the birthing center, which is within the hospital. So you pull up to the hospital. They have valet parking, but I don't think...
Yeah, it probably wasn't even open yet.
I don't think it was open. So we just left the car in the circle.
Oh my gosh.
And which the birthing center said we could if we needed to like leave it for an hour or so.
Yeah.
And so we left it there, and Jason was, walking with me. And I remember the midwife asking, do we want a wheelchair waiting for us when we got there? And I said, no, I'm not going to sit down in a wheelchair. So walking into the birthing center, I think I had like 2 contractions where I would just hang on Jason and like lean and sway. Mm-hmm. And I think there was like a maintenance worker walking by like, do you need a wheelchair? No,
it's always like their first question.
No, I'm okay. And let's see. I think
kind of like the world just like stops in that moment too.
Oh my God,
you're
so
like
much.
in public, but you're just like with your partner, and you're just like, I just need you and only you.
Yeah. So when we got to the like actual birthing center, which is within the hospital, Jenny, the midwife, was waiting for us. At the practice, there was like 6 to 8 midwives maybe at that time.
Around there.
And each appointment, I would have a different midwife to get to know them all, because when you don't get to choose who's, there when you're giving birth. It's just who's ever on call. And they have 4 birthing suites, and they named them after the seasons. And I wanted the winter room.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just felt very comfortable there.
Yeah.
But it was occupied. So I got the summer room, and I just like immediately got naked and was like, can I get in the tub, please? They filled it up while they checked me. Jenny checked me, and I didn't want to know what I was dilated to. So they didn't tell me. But later I found out that I was a 7 when I got there,
That's
which
crazy.
is pretty
Almost
a lot.
done. So you think it was like 1 a.m. to like 6 a.m. you were at home and then you guys headed?
Yeah, I think we left home around 5. So we
Okay.
probably got there around like 5:30.
Okay.
And then once everything was like said and done, got into the tub around like 6.
Yeah.
And so I labored in the tub for a good while. It just felt so good. Like just being weightless and the warm water. And
Yeah.
Jason was just sitting there like pouring water over my back.
Mm-hmm.
And our doula was there and she's like telling me, just talking me through contractions and stuff. So that was just amazing. I wish I could have just stayed in the tub the whole time. But I think that my doula kind of realized that I was like getting a little further along and that we should probably change positions. And so she suggested that I get on the toilet
Mm-hmm.
and start laboring there. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure I did get another check, but I don't know what it was. And they kept checking my blood pressure because it was pretty high when I got there. And as I was laboring on the toilet, I think they checked me again and they basically told me that if I didn't give birth soon, that I was going to have to transfer upstairs, which like to the normal hospital, to the regular, like, labor.
Delivery.
Yeah. And I didn't tour that floor, which now I should have, like looking back, I should have toured it because there's always a chance that you could get transferred, just depending on what happens during your birth. And I didn't know what that really meant. Like, oh, you're going to have to be transferred upstairs.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like, no, I really want to give birth down here. I need to like, what can I do? And I didn't know what they were going to do upstairs. Like, what were they going to force me to have like an epidural or something? Like,
Yeah.
no. Like later I realized all they would do is like extra monitoring.
Yeah. And maybe like give you some blood pressure medication.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But like in my mind, it was like, no, this is the worst thing ever. Like, I don't want to go upstairs. I want to stay down here. And, looking back, it seems kind of silly that I was like so worried then.
But they kind of told you at like a very weird time. I mean, you were in very active labor nearing the end. It was almost like, if you don't do this, you don't get this. So
it was strange.
Yeah, maybe just better language would have been helpful.
So while I was on the toilet, that all happened. And I was basically like it was pretty soon after that, though, that I did start feeling like the really pushy contractions, like the kind of ones that make your whole body just shudder, There was a lot of fear from, the unknown, the pain. And my doula would like I would have these contractions and just like start, she could tell like the whole time before that I was doing like the low moaning, like, like that they're supposed to help, kind of open things up down there.
Yeah.
And she could tell that I was starting to like get a little bit higher and, my voice, and just like, I remember looking at her just like, what is going on? And she would like step out of the shadows and be like, you're okay. Like, moan with me. Like, come on, like you can make it through.
Oh, I love
and
that.
The transition, it didn't really last long. It was probably like a couple of minutes. I mean, it felt like an eternity while it was happening. But it's funny though, after transition, I had like regular contractions and I was able to rest in between.
Crazy.
So my whole labor, I was just having these like weird, not really regular contractions. And I just remember like having a contraction and then just like my whole body just leaning into Jason.
And would you be able to like talk and have a conversation?
Kind of. I just
Yeah.
wanted to rest.
Yeah.
Like I probably might have fallen asleep like in between
That's
these
what-
contractions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like what one of the midwives were like saying, like, don't be surprised if they fall asleep. And it seems like it's the most relaxing thing to us, but it's literally like the snap of the finger.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But then it felt like I knew that I was close.
Yeah.
And so I felt a little bit more relaxed. And so at that point, they wanted me to get checked again. So they could know if I was close, like very close, then, I wouldn't really have to be transferred upstairs. But if I wasn't still, if I wasn't dilated enough, then they would have to, we would figure out if I needed to be transferred. So they checked me and I was a 10 and I was fully effaced. And so they were like, okay, well, do you want to like start pushing? And I was like, okay, how, like, what do I do? And they're just like, okay, let's try a couple positions. And so the one that worked, what they had me do was kind of squat and like hold on to the sink in the bathroom. And so I was just like squatting during the contractions and then I would stand up. Yeah, at that point, during one of those, I think I wasn't like pushing. It was just like me squatting and kind of just seeing what happened during a contraction. So during one of them, I felt that lovely ring of fire. So the ring of fire lasted, I don't know, like 3 seconds, but that's painful. And
that's a lot in birth world.
Yeah. And so Arthur, we didn't know it was a boy then, but his head came out and I just remember just being so out of it and like looking around. And at that point there were like 3 midwives there, I think. His head came out and it might have been Elizabeth was like, reach down and touch his head. So I did it and it was just so weird. Like you're touching something on your body, but you can't feel it.
Yeah.
It's not part of my body. And it was just like slimy. So then his head was out and I kind of looked around like, what do I do now? Like, do I need to like push again? Like what's going on? And they were like, your next contraction, his body will just come out. And so I'm still squatting and I had another contraction and his body just slid out right into Jason's hands.
Aww.
Jason was down there. I think Elizabeth was down there. They all had flashlights because it was really dark in the room.
Yeah.
I just wanted like low lighting.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
They were like really respectful of, like the low talking and low lighting and everything. He came out and
what time was that at?
it was 8:57.
Yeah, something.
So I went into labor around 1.
Yeah, I
had
know.
him at 8:57.
Like
So
not
it was
even 8 hours.
8
later.
hours.
For your first birth.
8 hours.
Let's just give her a round of applause, guys.
So fast. Yeah, so they handed him to me and I'm still like squatting and I kind of was like leaning against the bed at this point, but still like squatting. And so I'm like holding him. They kind of wiped him off. It was pretty bloody and wiped him off a little bit. And I'm holding him and they like heaved me up onto the bed. I had no like strength in my legs at all after that. And I got up onto the bed and got to do a little cuddling with Arthur. And we had not found out if he was boy or girl before, birth. And we're like, Jason's there and I'm there. And we're like, oh my God, like, who is this stranger? Like, what is going on? And one of the nurses was like, so is it a boy or girl? And we were like, oh my God, we didn't even check yet. It wasn't like the first thing we looked at or anything.
Yeah.
We were both just like, oh my God, it's a boy. And so, yeah, that was really nice. I got to cuddle with him for a couple minutes. And then my placenta was not like coming out easily. So after a couple minutes of the like delayed cord clamping, they decided to cut the cord. Jason cut the cord and to help me try to get my placenta out.
Yeah.
And they had Jason take his shirt off and gave Arthur to him. So there's some really cute pictures of him having skin to skin with
The golden hour.
Arthur while I'm like squatting in the background trying to get my placenta out. So yeah, I kept bleeding and it was like clots, like big clots of blood just coming out, like really big. And every time there would be like a gush, I'd be like, was that the placenta? They're like, no, that's just like more blood.
Wow.
So they were like, had one of those bedpan things that they were like catching the blood in.
Wow.
And it like filled it up. So they were, getting really concerned about my blood loss and that the placenta wasn't coming out. Like they were like tugging on it and having me like squat, try to like, they're like, okay, now act like you're, going poop, trying to like squeeze it out. And it just wasn't coming out. So they decided that I would need to be transferred upstairs to be under the care of the OBGYN on call.
So how many minutes do you think that you were trying to push it out, per se?
So looking back on pictures, it was about 30 minutes.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot longer than I thought.
So this was about 9:30 when they were like, okay, you need to go upstairs.
Yeah.
And the only reason I know this was from pictures, because at that point I was like freaked out.
Thank God for timestamps.
I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
They don't educate you on like the afterbirth. They're just like, yeah, and then the placenta comes out and then you're good and everything's fine.
Then you're done.
Yeah. So I just didn't really know what was going on. So they had the birthing center was on the first floor. Labor and delivery is on the
Sixth floor.
sixth floor. And there's an elevator right by the birthing center that they use for emergencies that goes straight up to labor and delivery. And they had me on like a gurney. So I'm laying down. They give me Arthur, thankfully. So I had him on my chest and I'm in this elevator. And I just remember like being like really scared and not knowing like what was going on. And
you're going from like super low lighting to super bright lighting.
Very bright. Lots of people around. Thankfully, Jason was there with me, and the elevator went really fast. It like made me really dizzy. And I was just like looking like at everybody like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And so we go up to like a labor and delivery room. The OBGYN checks me and, is like, yeah, your placenta is not coming out. We're going to need to hand deliver this, which means they stick their hand in your uterus and pry your placenta off of the uterus. I mean, they're doing this with their hand. Like,
you told me it was like a scab one time.
Yeah.
Like in your uterine lining. So
yeah. I mean, your placenta is attached to your uterus and it's supposed to just naturally come off after you have a baby, and then a whole chain reaction happens with hormones and your milk coming in and like all these things are supposed to happen. And that didn't happen with me. So they gave me morphine, which, as I said earlier, I just hate pain medications. Like they make me feel so weird. I just remember looking at Jason like, oh gosh, I feel so dizzy. Like you're going to have to hold Arthur. And so during all this is when they were doing like the footprint and weighing him and all that stuff, which I missed because they were basically like pulling an organ out of my uterus. And they gave me some Pitocin, I think. I just was really out of it at this point. So I don't really know what was going on. I just remember it being really painful, like way more than the birth.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather give birth a million times than have to go through that again. And it's really not common. So don't mean to scare anybody.
Yeah, I really never heard of that until you.
And so they got the placenta out, and I wanted like a tour of my placenta.
Ditto.
And so they showed it to me, and at this point it was like 10:30. So it had been like an hour and a half since I gave birth.
So how was everything once you went through that and got to mother baby floor?
It was good after that. I was able to eat some of those turkey sandwiches.
Ooh, the bomb turkey sandwiches.
They're so good. After we got settled in, we had no idea what we were going to name Arthur. We had a couple names picked out that were like, I don't know. Do we like these? Do we not like these? We really wanted to see him before we named him. So none of those names fit at all. We were just like, none of these names are him. We just were kind of chatting about that throughout the day and felt pretty good after that. We had family come to visit. We were kind of like not able to rest. I don't know. I think it was just like that adrenaline, you know, that you have. Even though we hadn't slept the night before, we were like tired, but also really excited. Obviously, it's our first baby. We wanted everyone to come meet him. So my parents came, and then Jason's parents came, and then we had our siblings come separately. It was really nice having visitors, and Natalie came.
Yeah, Sam and I came after actually shopping for his wedding tux. That was fun. So we were like so excited. I'm like, come on, we have to go. And we got up and ran into Sam's dad and aunt in the elevator. And I was like rushing, and I was like, my sister-in-law had a baby. Let's go. Actually, I did walk into like the welcome center. I'm like, so my sister-in-law had a baby. Where do I go? And they're like, not here. They're like, these elevators. And we got up there, and our other sister-in-law, Marion, was holding Arthur at that point. And she's like, do you want to hold him? And I'm like, yeah. And guys, I just immediately started bawling. I think there might be pictures. I really hope there are, but it was a really good moment.
Yeah.
I think I was really anticipating Arthur.
Jason and I were like, what?
If you can't tell, I was excited for my nephew.
It was really cute. So the rest of the stay was okay. I mean, I tried breastfeeding, and we, you know, you don't know what you're doing.
No.
And every nurse would come in and be like, here, you got to make a hamburger out of your boob and then shove it in his mouth, and like all these weird terms. And I'm just like, what? And I had to have like nipple shields, and every nurse had a different technique. And every time I'm like, you know, is he eating? And the nurse would be like, yeah, he's latched on. Okay, everything's good. Well, then by day 2, I had to stay 2 days because of my high blood pressure. They kept monitoring me. Mm-hmm. And by day 2, during all this, there was an ice storm too. And the lactation consultants weren't there because of the ice storm. They couldn't come until like really late because of the ice storm. And she would like looked at us breastfeeding, and she was like, yeah, he's not getting anything. He has a tongue tie. And I'm like, excuse me? Like so for 2 days he hasn't been getting anything? And she's like, oh yeah, but it's completely normal. Like, you know, you don't really need much. Just start like hand expressing the colostrum and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, what? What do you mean? Like, I don't know any of this. I even took a breastfeeding class and didn't anticipate it being so difficult. We went home, and that night was just like awful. We were like, he was hungry, and we were like, we don't know what to do. We didn't get any education on like formula or pumping or anything. They just basically like sent us home and said, we'll figure it out tomorrow. But meanwhile, we have this 3-day-old baby who's crying, and we're like, what are we supposed to do? So the next day we go, and my blood pressure was better and it was fine. But I walked into the birthing center and just burst into tears. Like, it was so emotional being there. And the last time I had been there was like being wheeled out after giving birth. So seeing it again, because normally if you give birth in the birthing center, they discharge you after 12 hours. It was emotional being back there.
For sure.
And they looked at Arthur and they said, yeah, he has a tongue tie. We can clip it here. And we were like, okay, sure. So they just like did that. They were like, okay, let's try breastfeeding again. So I sat there and Michelle helped me breastfeed. And it was another one of those like, okay, he's latched. I think he's getting something. Okay, like you can go home now and just keep him at the breast. I'm like, okay, so I'll just keep doing that. Well, he just wasn't gaining any weight. He was crying. So the pediatrician basically said, you can give him formula. And we were like, okay, is there a certain kind? And she was like, anything, just whatever's on sale. Like, you just need to feed your baby. So I'm like, okay. And she's like, and just start pumping. And you can supplement with pumped milk. So I think I don't know if we had to go back to the birthing center or what, but I remember talking to Michelle and she said, oh, if you want, you can feed him with like syringes, like, the medicine ones, instead of a bottle. And that way, like, it won't disturb like your breastfeeding bond or whatever. Like, it won't confuse him.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so we're doing that. And he started gaining weight. And we were like, okay, this is a little bit better. But then it just he wasn't gaining what we had hoped. And we had our first visit with our doula.
Okay.
So she offers 2 postpartum visits. And the first one, she came and she was just like, okay, you look terrible. And your baby looks like very, skinny. And we were like, okay, like what? And she's like, are you doing like weight checks and everything? We said, yeah, we have to go to the pediatrician like every other day. And we're feeding him, formula, and I'm pumping and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, how are you feeling after all of that blood loss? And I'm like, well, I can't get out of bed. Like, I was so tired. Like, Jason was doing all the diaper changes. He would bring Arthur to me in the bed because I just like felt so drained. And our doula was like, well, didn't the midwives give you any like iron supplements or anything to get like your blood back? Like, healthy.
Yeah.
Like, you lost a lot of blood. And I was like, honestly, it was never mentioned again. I don't know if it's because I was transferred and there was like no communication between the midwives and mother baby floor or what, but like I had almost forgotten about it, And she's like, that is like 95% the reason why you're not being able to breastfeed, because you're probably not producing a lot of milk. And when I was pumping, I really wasn't getting much either, but I was like, oh, well, maybe he's getting it. And that way I'm not having a lot
extra
to pump. Yeah. So I still like had that hope that it was like working.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. And I didn't have any supply. And so she gave me the number of a lactation consultant, like one of the
IBCLC.
Yeah, like a real one.
Yeah.
She came over the next day and was like, okay, we need to, like, do you have bottles? This baby needs to eat. We started feeding him out of bottles with formula. And she showed me how to use my pump and got me on like a bunch of supplements to boost my production. And the doula had also given me a ton of like recommendations for supplements for my iron, a bunch of stuff from Whole Foods, which I made Lauren go and like buy me all this stuff, like chlorophyll or something.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. There was a bunch of different ones, and I did start feeling better, and some other supplements to help with like my mood and stuff too. And she also checked for tongue ties. And she said that Arthur had very severe tongue ties and that the clipping really didn't do anything. And if we wanted to get that fixed, then they would need to be like lasered. And so we made an appointment to do that. It didn't help with the breastfeeding. Like it didn't help in it. After you get the tongue tie, you have to like do these exercises on your baby's tongue.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. I made Jason do it. He would scream at the top of his lungs, and it just like I had to like cover my ears. Like my heart would start racing, and I'm like, we can't hurt him, like this is so sad. But it was like all to preserve our breastfeeding journey, which now looking back, like I don't know, maybe it helped him take a bottle. I don't know. I don't want to like think it was all for nothing, because it was horrible to have to go through. So we had to do that. We had to do like cranial therapy with a chiropractor, but it just, none of it helped. And we had a lot of things going against us with the low supply, tongue ties, and me just being very, very tired from all the blood loss that I had. So yeah, it didn't really help. I've spent a ton of money on supplements to boost my supply, ate all the oatmeal, drank the red Powerade and everything that I would read on the blogs to help my supply. None of it really helped, but I was pumping, and through pumping, I would get enough, to feed him for the day. And it was probably like, I don't know, a month into all this where this is going to be the last time I try like direct feeding, because this is too much, doing the triple feeding. And it was like a weight was lifted from me, and I started exclusively pumping, and not having to triple feed was just amazing. Jason, he was helping from the get-go, but like we could trade off a little bit more.
Yeah.
And
triple feeding is where you put the baby to breast. Then what else?
Supplement with pumped milk, and then whatever they're not getting from that, you supplement with formula.
With a bottle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're basically pumping, feeding formula, and direct feeding.
Gotcha.
And it would take 30 minutes for this whole process. And then you're supposed to feed them every 2 hours.
Yeah.
So you would get I'd get done, and then I'd have to go wash all the bottles. And, it was just like we weren't getting any rest, and there was no relief. So once I did stop direct feeding, everything got a little bit better. Pumping is hard. You have to do it every 2 to 3 hours, or your supply just like plummets. You have to do it in the middle of the night also, while you're also like feeding, a newborn baby, and trying to recover all your lady bits also. So I pumped, I think it was about 5 months that I exclusively pumped. And I spent so much money on these supplements and pumping equipment. I mean, you have to have a hands-free bra to be able to like do stuff while you're pumping. And I got the portable pump and all the different sizes of the flange, just to try to get more output. That was always my goal, was to get more output. Like, okay, I got 20 ounces today. Can I get 25 ounces tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was just so hard.
Exhausting. Just measuring yourself by numbers. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I was keeping track of how much Arthur was eating, how much I was pumping. And like, it was just like a lot going on. Like I was writing stuff down in a notebook, and Jason was like, okay, are you like a beautiful mind right now? Like, what is going on? What, you can't keep this up. So yeah, it was good. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was good. I mean, I got to bond with Arthur a lot more that I like when I wasn't trying to breastfeed, because it was hard. You have a screaming baby at your boob, and you're trying to like feed them.
And they can sense when you're getting more stressed.
Yes. So by bottle feeding, I was able to bond
Yeah.
with him. And so, yeah, I had my maternity leave. It was not 6, I wish. It was 3 months. And I went back to work, and
I was their nanny for
Yeah.
like 2 days a week.
Yeah, that was amazing. Best nanny ever. They had a pumping room at my work, which was awesome. I would like set up my phone to watch TV shows during my like 20-minute break and go pump. But that's like kind of like when I got back to like reality, that's when I realized that I had like severe postpartum anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started going to therapy and started healing from everything. I attributed a lot of my anxiety to the feeding issues,
Mm-hmm.
but looking back now, I can see that it was also because of like the traumatic birth and afterbirth.
Yeah.
I didn't really realize that until Vivian.
I don't think I even realized it within you. Like I knew things way later, and I don't think I realized how much it affected you until almost I had Wesley, and like we talked about the anxiety.
Yeah. They don't really talk about the anxiety. You know, you hear about postpartum depression, they do all these screenings when you're going to the pediatrician and, you know, your 6-week checkup, and they're like, here's this screening. And I didn't have any of those symptoms. Like, I just felt anxious. And, like, if we didn't do something, like, if something was out of the ordinary, or we had, like, someone come visit, or I don't know, like I needed things to be on a schedule.
Yeah.
And if that didn't happen, I was just anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Jason didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's our first
You
baby.
kind of just like alert them of the depression mode too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I just told Sam, like all the depression, look out for this.
Mm-hmm.
But the anxiety, it's right at your front door and you have no idea.
Yeah. It was hard. And once I finally recognized it, I was able to deal with it. I did the cognitive behavioral therapy, and still, you know, dealing with it. I'm medicated now. After I had Vivian, I realized like this anxiety is not going away. It was a long road, but I love like my birth. It was a really powerful birth, and I'm glad that I was able to go unmedicated. And
I mean, all in all, it's like you have your birth planned, but there's going to be X, Y, and Z that shows up. And I think there was a lot to that in the postpartum recovery that you had. And, you know, future moms out there, like, you can plan for something, but just know it might go a different way. Mm-hmm. And it's not all scary. It's not all traumatic. And there's not all this like bad things to birth, but
yeah,
you know, just be ready to pivot.
Just knowing that you have support and someone with you. Like if Jason wouldn't have been there and my doula wouldn't have been there, it just would have been even that much harder. So
For sure.
And like I had, you know, a traumatic afterbirth. I wouldn't say birth, but when I had my second child, when I had Vivian, it was just so completely different and so healing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can have a birth plan, but you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Liz, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Yeah.
I know it was a lot, but I know it probably feels good to just kind of get it out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also want to, again, give a shout out to our cousin, brother-in-law, Donnie Rogers, for the amazing intro song.
And please share our podcast with your friends and family and your OBGYN and your midwives and your doulas and just anyone who you think would be interested in hearing some birth stories.
Yeah. And up next is mine with Wesley.
So excited.
I'm so excited. And we'll actually be recording it on his first birthday.
Yay.
So cue the tears. All right. Thanks so much.